The news broke just after midnight, a push alert that sent a jolt through the political world like a sudden earthquake. Former President Donald J. Trump, amid a raucous rally in Tallahassee, Florida, had declared that California Governor Gavin Newsom should be arrested immediately and publicly for his alleged connections to a growing wave of civil unrest that had overtaken several major cities. The crowd erupted as Trump, standing before a sea of red hats and American flags, promised to clean house and bring traitors and tyrants to justice. Within minutes, Just Arrest Newsom was trending on every major social platform, fueled by a swirl of edited videos, leaked memos, and conspiracy-laced live streams. Trump's words were not phrased as a casual remark or an offhand dig. He read from a folder he claimed was classified but declassified for the people, which included what he described as direct proof that Newsom's office had coordinated with radical protest organizers behind the scenes, funding logistical support and shielding key figures from prosecution. By morning, right-wing networks had launched wall-to-wall coverage. The documents Trump revealed, poorly redacted PDFs with markings resembling internal state memos, were debated as gospel by some and dismissed as forgeries by others. The California Governor's office issued a flat denial, calling the allegations ludicrous political theater. Newsom himself appeared in a hastily organized press conference, visibly angry but composed, denouncing Trump as a twice-impeached criminal masquerading as a populist savior, and warning that the real danger lay in the normalization of political persecution. But the damage had already begun. The DOJ, now led by a Trump-appointed acting AG following months of bitter litigation and court challenges, confirmed it had opened a preliminary inquiry into the accusations, citing serious public concern. While legal analysts debated the unprecedented nature of such a move against a sitting governor, the streets in several cities took a darker turn. In Sacramento, LA, and Oakland, counter-protesters clashed with pro-Trump demonstrators demanding Newsom's arrest. Police declared multiple riots as storefronts shattered and tear gas filled the air. The national mood, already frayed from years of polarization, seemed to splinter further. Across Washington, chaos echoed in every hallway of power. Democratic lawmakers decried Trump's threats as authoritarian thuggery, while several GOP hardliners doubled down, demanding immediate accountability and claiming they had seen similar evidence linking Newsom to Antifa-aligned groups. The White House, still reeling from months of bruising legislative gridlock and under fire for its handling of civil unrest in Portland and Seattle, remained largely silent. President Harris, navigating her own internal party battles and pressure from centrist donors, issued a carefully worded statement about respecting due process, while emphasizing that political theater must never overtake constitutional order. But in the vacuum of leadership and truth, extremism flourished. Independent investigative journalists and digital sleuths picked apart the documents Trump had presented, finding inconsistencies and signs of fabrication, fonts that didn't match state templates, timestamps that postdated the supposed events. Yet the debunkings failed to reach the viral velocity of the original claims. Right-wing influencers kept feeding the narrative, and their audiences, inflamed by years of distrust in traditional media, didn't blink. In the backdrop, the man at the center of it all, Gavin Newsom, found himself in a tightening vice. While his allies in California stood firmly by him, whispers of unease spread among national Democrats. Some feared that even if Trump's documents were fake, the mere suggestion of collaboration with violent elements could taint Newsom's already fragile public image. Old footage began resurfacing, videos of Newsom marching with protesters during the George Floyd summer, audio snippets taken out of context, edited to suggest sympathy for fringe groups. Republican attorneys general in red states began preparing their own cases, some announcing symbolic charges or investigations to examine all angles of corruption. Meanwhile, Newsom's legal team scrambled to push back. They filed lawsuits, sought emergency restraining orders, and called on the FBI to investigate the origins of the forged files. But nothing seemed to slow the spread. In homes across America, voters didn't see the legal rebuttals or fact checks. They saw a former president demanding accountability and a sitting governor under suspicion. For many, The optics alone were enough to assume guilt. In a surprising twist, an anonymous source from within the California state capitol began leaking internal communications to independent media outlets, Slack logs, emails, and text messages, some of which appeared to show informal conversations between Newsom aides and left-wing activist groups. Though far from evidence of criminality, the tone in some messages suggested at least a degree of coordination around protest strategy, including crowd mobilization and public messaging. Newsom's office insisted the conversations were about ensuring peaceful demonstrations and preventing violence, not promoting it, but the distinction was lost in the fevered coverage. For Trump's base, this was the smoking gun. Newsom's political enemies smelled blood, and even moderate voices began, calling for a full congressional inquiry. The narrative, now far larger than any one speech or document, took on a life of its own. Talk of treason, sedition, and a deep state insurrection filled the airwaves, especially on digital platforms where outrage could be weaponized at lightning speed. Newsom, once considered a possible presidential contender, was now fighting for his political life, and perhaps even his freedom. As tension escalated, the National Guard was deployed in several Californian cities to maintain order. Protesters clashed nightly, with rival factions marching under opposing banners, one demanding Newsom's arrest, the other declaring him the victim of a political coup. The images were surreal. American flags waved next to signs reading "Dictator Gavin," while others held banners stating, "Save Democracy, Stop Trump." In Sacramento, Newsom's motorcade was attacked with paint bombs and projectiles. The security detail responded with force, and the resulting images, guardsmen pushing back crowds, a governor shielded by armored SUVs, only fueled the media frenzy. Meanwhile, Trump capitalized on the chaos, doubling down in interviews and claiming that more governors could be next. "Newsom is just the start," he said in a viral clip. "We're going to root out the corruption state by state until the swamp is truly drained." His supporters, emboldened by the escalation, began organizing what they called freedom patrols, unofficial neighborhood watch groups aligned more with ideology than law, some even openly armed. Behind closed doors, several senior officials in the intelligence community began to express alarm. While Trump's influence had long been considered politically potent, the move to criminalize a sitting governor without clear evidence crossed a line they never anticipated in peacetime. Classified memos warned of a growing risk of domestic insurgency. International allies watched in disbelief, with European leaders issuing cautious statements about respecting U.S. democratic norms. China and Russia, meanwhile, used the incident as propaganda fodder, mocking American instability and fake democracy. In the United Nations, U.S. representatives found themselves fending off questions about political prosecutions and authoritarian rhetoric. Yet domestically, the machine of chaos churned forward. Polls showed a significant shift among Republican voters, with over 60% supporting Newsom's arrest. Among independents, the number was smaller, but the confusion alone damaged Newsom's standing. Some asked if stepping down would restore calm, but Newsom refused. "This is my state," he declared. "I will not be bullied out of it." Eventually, a federal court was forced to intervene. A judge issued a temporary injunction blocking any arrest warrant without further evidence. Legal scholars debated the implications for federalism and executive power. Trump, undeterred, called, "The judge compromised and encouraged state militias to stay vigilant." The rhetoric became more openly seditious, and reports began surfacing of breakaway groups forming encampments in rural areas, declaring themselves free American zones, free from what they called Newsom tyranny. In response, the FBI quietly launched counter-extremism operations, arresting several plotters planning to abduct state officials. The entire nation watched, paralyzed, as the line between political theater and insurrection blurred dangerously. In the midst of it, all Newsom gave a speech on the steps of the state capitol. With a bulletproof vest under his suit, flanked by armed security, he addressed the nation. "If this is the cost of standing up to lies, Then I accept it, he said. But I will not be the first American leader removed by conspiracy and chaos. As autumn approached, the fever finally began to break. A coalition of legal experts, journalists, and former federal prosecutors published a detailed report debunking the entirety of the Trump dossier. Forensic analysts traced the fake documents to a shadowy network of political operatives linked to a former campaign manager. Arrests followed. Charges were filed. The report, widely circulated and covered by mainstream outlets, began to slow the momentum behind the accusations. Still, the scars remained. Newsom, though vindicated in court, was politically battered. Trump, meanwhile, claimed the arrests were Paco,